Welcome back to Sleepy Chronicles. Tonight, we drift back to a time that never truly was, yet feels strangely familiar. We are traveling to the 14th century, but not to the castles or the grand battlefields of the history books. Instead, we find ourselves on the vast, muddy frontiers of the medieval world, following the lonely path of the first cattle drivers, the cowboys of the Middle Ages. Before we begin our slow journey through the mist, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel to join our quiet community of night travelers. Now settle into your seat, close your eyes, and listen to the rhythm of the trail. The morning air in the year 1342 is thick enough to taste. It carries the scent of damp peat, old leather, and the heavy, musky odor of 300 head of cattle. You are positioned at the swing, riding just to the side of the main body of the herd. Your horse, a sturdy, thick-legged cob named Jasper, breathes deeply, his nostrils flaring with every deliberate step into the gray sludge of the valley floor. There is no dust here like the stories of the American West. There is only the silver reflection of the sky in the puddles that mark the path toward the southern markets. You reach down to touch the pommel of your saddle. It is not the high-backed war saddle of a knight, but a functional, worn piece of equipment, scarred by years of rain and sun. The stirrups under your boots are heavy iron, cold to the touch, grounding you as the herd shifts and sways like a slow-moving river of brown and white hide. The cattle are a hardy breed, lean and temperamental, with horns that span the width of the narrow forest trails you must eventually navigate. To your left, the tree-line of the great weald looms like a silent wall of oak and ash. You watch the way the fog weaves between the trunks, hiding the world beyond. Your job is simple yet infinite. You must keep the pace. Not too fast, for the meat must stay on the bone. Not too slow, for the winter rains are coming, and the river crossings will soon become impassable. You adjust the wool scarf wrapped tightly around your neck. The fabric is scratchy, a constant dull sensation against your skin that keeps you anchored in the present moment. You watch a single crow perched on a rotted fence post. It watches the herd with a glass-black eye, uninterested in the human drama of commerce and survival. You feel a slight ache in your lower back, a familiar companion after 10 hours in the saddle. You shift your weight, feeling the leather groan softly under you. The lead bull, a massive beast with a notched ear, pauses to sniff at a clump of yellow gorse. You wait. There is no rush. Time in the Middle Ages does not move by the ticking of a clock, but by the movement of shadows and the hunger in your belly. The sun is a pale coin behind the clouds, providing just enough light to see the steam rising from the backs of the animals. It is a sea of slow motion. The clicking of hooves against stray stones. The occasional low moan of a calf calling for its mother. Everything is submerged in a quiet, heavy peace. You realize that for the next 40 days, this will be your entire universe. Just you, the horse, the mud, and the endless, rhythmic horizon. You close your eyes for a brief second, inhaling the cold, wet air, and let the stillness take hold. The journey is long, the work is dull, and the world is very, very quiet. The mist from the morning hasn't lifted. It has only thickened, turning the world into a canvas of charcoal and silver. You are still following the line of the valley, the same one we entered hours ago. The rhythmic swaying of the cattle's hips remains your primary clock, a slow pendulum marking the passage of the day. Jasper, your horse, remains steady beneath you, his breathing heavy but rhythmic as he navigates the worsening terrain. Up ahead, the path narrows as we approach the first major obstacle of this journey, the crossing of the Gray River. This isn't a deep river, but it is wide and sluggish, filled with silt that can trap a tired animal if they wander from the stony ford. You signal to the other drivers with a low, mournful whistle, a sound that barely cuts through the heavy air. The lead bull, the one with the notched ear we noticed earlier, reaches the water's edge and pauses. He snorts, his breath mixing with the river's rising vapor, hesitant to commit his weight to the moving water. You nudge Jasper forward, moving from the flank to the front, feeling the water begin to soak into your leather boots as you enter the shallows. The water is ice cold, a sharp contrast to the warmth of the horse's body. You watch the ripples break against Jasper's legs, the current pulling gently at his stride. One by one, the herd begins to follow, a slow-motion cascade of bone and hide into the stream. The sound changes here. The muffled thud of hooves on mud is replaced by the splashing of water and the grinding of stones beneath the surface. It is a delicate moment, a test of patience. If the herd panics, they could drift into the deeper pools, but the silence of the day seems to have infected them too. They move like shadows through the water. Halfway across, you pause to look back at the line of animals stretching across the river. It is a scene that has likely played out on this very ford for hundreds of years, a cycle of commerce and survival that doesn't care for the passing of kings. You feel the dampness of the river air settling on your skin, a fine dew that clings to your eyelashes. You reach into your saddlebag, feeling for a dry cloth to wipe your face, but decide against it. The moisture is just part of the trail now. Once the lead bull climbs the opposite bank, shaking the water from his flanks with a heavy, wet sound, the tension breaks. The herd climbs out of the river, leaving the crossing behind and moving onto the rocky slope of the southern ridge. The ground here is harder, the mud giving way to ancient, weathered limestone. You feel a slight sense of relief, though the day is far from over. Your back still aches with that familiar, dull throb, and the goal of the southern markets is still many days away. The sun, though invisible behind the clouds, is beginning to dip lower, casting the valley in an even deeper shade of blue. You look down at your hands, red and chapped from the cold and the constant grip on the reins. You realize how small this world has become, just the width of the trail and the length of the herd. You are a part of the landscape now as much as the river or the stones. As we move further up the ridge, the wind begins to howl softly through the gaps in the rocks, a lonely flute playing for a silent audience. $/$, the journey continues, one slow step at a time. The rocky ridge beneath Jasper's hooves feels solid and unforgiving compared to the shifting mud of the valley floor. As we climb higher, the wind begins to pick up, a steady, low hum that vibrates through the iron of your stirrups. The cattle are slower now, their heads hanging low, their breath coming in heavy, rhythmic sighs that sync with the swaying of their massive frames. You can feel the collective exhaustion of the herd. It's a physical weight that hangs in the air, thick and undeniable. Below you, the river we just crossed looks like a thin, silver vein cutting through the darkening landscape. The world is expanding as we reach the crest of the hill, but it feels lonelier than ever. There are no villages in sight, only the vast rolling expanse of the highlands, draped in shades of indigo and violet as the sun finally surrenders to the horizon. You adjust the heavy wool of your cloak, pulling it tighter against the biting chill that comes with the elevation. Your fingers are stiff, the skin dry and tight, but the reins feel like an extension of your own body. The goal for tonight is a sheltered hollow known to generations of drivers, a place where the wind is blocked by ancient, jagged rock formations. As the lead bull reaches the edge of the hollow, he lets out a deep, resonant lowing that echoes off the stone walls. It's a signal of arrival, a brief moment of recognition that the day's labor is nearing its end. You guide Jasper to the side, watching as the 300 head of cattle slowly funnel into the natural enclosure, their bodies huddling together for warmth. Dismounting is a slow, painful process. Your legs feel heavy, almost wooden, as they touch the solid ground for the first time in hours. You lead Jasper to a patch of sheltered grass, removing his saddle with practiced, sluggish movements. The leather is dark with sweat and rain, smelling of salt and horsehair. You spend a few quiet minutes brushing his coat, the repetitive motion of your arms serving as a meditation, a way to signal to your own mind that the movement has finally stopped. The camp is a modest affair. No grand tents or roaring bonfires, just a small, flickering flame sheltered by a circle of stones. You sit on a flat rock, your back resting against the cold limestone, watching the steam rise from a small pot of thin stew. The silence of the highlands is absolute, broken only by the occasional shift of a cow's weight or the crackle of a dry twig in the fire. You reach into your pack and find a crust of hard bread, dipping it into the broth. Simple, it's boring, and yet, in this moment, it is everything. As the stars begin to poke through the thinning clouds, you look out over the dark shapes of the sleeping herd. They look like boulders scattered across the hollow, ancient and unmoving. The world of knights, cathedrals, and kingdoms feels like a fevered dream from another life. Here, on the ridge, life is reduced to the most basic elements: breath, warmth, and the promise of another sunrise. You wrap yourself in your bedroll, the smell of damp earth rising from the ground to meet you. The night is long, the air is cold, and the silence is your only companion. The dawn does not arrive with a burst of light, but with a slow, agonizing transition from black to a bruised, heavy purple that seems to weigh down the very air. You wake before the sun, your limbs stiff and protesting against the damp wool of your bedroll, which has absorbed the overnight frost like a sponge. The fire from last night is nothing but a circle of gray ash, cold to the touch and smelling of spent pine. Around you, the herd is already stirring in the dim light. Their massive, shadowy bodies rise from the frost-covered grass like ancient stones coming to life, and you can hear the rhythmic, wet grinding of their teeth as they chew the frozen cud. It is a dry, mechanical sound that fills the silent hollow with a sense of infinite, weary repetition. Saddling Jasper is a genuine struggle this morning. The leather of the cinch has frozen stiff during the night, snapping like a dry twig under your numb, fumbling fingers. You breathe onto your hands, the warmth of your own lungs providing only a fleeting, momentary comfort before the biting Highland wind snatches it away. Once you are finally back in the saddle, the familiar ache in your lower back returns. A dull, reliable companion that reminds you of the hundreds of miles already traveled and the hundreds yet to come. You adjust your seat, feeling the coarse texture of the wool cloak against your neck, and signal the start of the day's march with a low, breathy whistle that barely carries past the horse's ears. We move out of the sheltered hollow and onto the great plateau, a flat, featureless expanse where the sky feels low enough to touch. There are no trees here, no landmarks to guide the wandering eye, only the endless, stretching horizon and the swaying, rhythmic backs of the cattle. This is the part of the drive that truly tests the soul, the sheer, crushing weight of the mundane. You find yourself staring at the notched ear of the lead bull for hours at a time, watching the way it flickers rhythmically to catch the lonely sound of the wind. Your mind begins to wander, drifting back to the flickering warmth of a hearth in a village you left weeks ago, but the sudden, biting cold of a gust always snaps you back to the brutal reality of the present. The ground on this plateau is deceptive and treacherous. Beneath the thin, sparkling layer of morning frost lies a deep crust of half-frozen mud that threatens to twist the ankles of any beast that loses its focus. You have to keep the herd tight, preventing the younger, more restless calves from wandering into the jagged rock outcroppings that hide like teeth within the rolling mist. There is no glory in this work, no songs will be sung of this crossing. There is only the constant, quiet vigilance of the trail. You reach for your wooden canteen, but the water inside has turned to a thick slush, painfully cold against your teeth and throat. You swallow it slowly, letting the chill slide down your chest and settle in your bones. By midday, the plateau seems to have expanded, stretching even further than the eye can see. The silence is so heavy and absolute that it feels like a physical pressure against your eardrums. You start to hum a low, wordless tune, something half-remembered from your childhood, just to fill the void of the wind. The cattle don't seem to mind the noise. They simply keep moving, their heavy hooves creating a dull, hypnotic thud against the earth that vibrates up through Jasper's legs and into your own body. You watch a solitary hawk circling high above, a tiny dark speck against the iron-colored clouds, hunting for something small and hidden in the frozen heather. For a brief moment, you envy its perspective, its ability to see the end of this wasteland from the heights. As the afternoon shadows begin to lengthen, stretching like long dark fingers across the silver frost, you notice a subtle change in the scent of the air. The smell of ice is replaced by the faint, distant aroma of pine and wet cedar drifting up from the southern slopes. It's a sign that the Highland stretch is finally nearing its end, though the descent will be its own kind of labor. You feel a small, quiet spark of hope deep in your chest, though you do not let it change your pace or your posture. In this world, excitement is a luxury that only leads to mistakes. You simply nudge Jasper forward with a gentle press of your heels, keeping your eyes locked on the darkening horizon, waiting for the first sight of the treeline. The transition from the high, frozen plateau to the sheltered valleys of the south is not a sudden one. It is a slow, agonizing crawl through layers of thickening mist and the heavy, stagnant smell of ancient forest rot. As the herd begins its final descent, the air loses its sharp, icy bite and replaces it with a heavy, clinging dampness that feels like a wet, wool blanket draped over your shoulders. You can feel the change in Jasper's gait. His hooves no longer strike the hard, frosted earth with a metallic ring, but begin to sink once more into the familiar, deep sludge of the lowland trails. The cattle sense the change too, their lowing becoming more frequent, a series of mournful, resonating calls that bounce off the encroaching walls of the pine forest. The trees here are old, their branches draped in thick, pale moss that looks like the silver beards of forgotten giants. As you ride beneath them, the world turns into a cathedral of shadows, where the only light is a sickly filtered green that barely illuminates the treacherous path ahead. You watch the way the mud churns beneath the hundreds of hooves, turning the trail into a dark, viscous river of clay and water. Your boots are now entirely encased in this thick earth, adding a literal weight to your stirrups that makes every shift of your body feel like a monumental effort. Every muscle in your back is screaming for rest, but the rhythm of the trail dictates that you must keep moving one heavy step at a time. The silence of the high country is eventually replaced by the rhythmic dripping of water from the pine needles and the distant, lonely tolling of a church bell. It's a sound you haven't heard in weeks, a reminder of civilization, of taxes, of stone walls and crowded, smoky hearths. It doesn't bring a sense of joy, only a dull realization that the solitude of the trail is coming to an end. You find yourself staring at the back of the lead bull's head, noticing how the notched ear has gathered a small collection of pine needles and dried mud. The animal looks as weary as you feel, his great muscles rippling beneath a coat that is now matted with the grime of a dozen different territories. As the forest finally thins, the first signs of the market town appear, not as grand spires, but as low wattle-and daub hovels huddled together against the relentless rain. The smell of wood smoke and pig manure drifts toward you, a pungent, domestic scent that feels almost overwhelming after the clean, empty air of the plateau. You guide the herd toward the southern gate, where the mud is at its deepest, churned by the carts and feet of 1,000 unseen travelers. There is no cheering crowd for your arrival. There is only the bored gaze of a gate guard leaning against a rotting timber post, his halberd resting forgotten against his shoulder. You lead the cattle into the holding pens, the sound of the wooden latches clicking shut providing the final punctuation to your journey. As you slide off Jasper's back, your knees nearly buckle under the weight of your own fatigue. You lead him to a small stable, the air inside warm and thick with the scent of dry hay. You spend a long time brushing the dried mud from his flanks, a silent thank you for the miles he carried you. The world outside is growing dark, the lanterns of the town flickering to life through the rain-streaked windows of the nearby tavern. Your journey is done. The cattle are safe, the coins will be counted in the morning, and the trail is now just a memory behind you. You find a small corner in the hayloft, wrapping yourself in your dry cloak, feeling the deep, heavy pull of sleep tugging at your eyelids. The sound of the rain against the thatch roof is the last thing you hear, a steady, hypnotic drumbeat that washes away the fatigue of the road. If you enjoyed this slow journey through the muddy history of the Middle Ages, please remember to like this video and subscribe to Sleepy Chronicles for more quiet adventures. It helps our small community grow. But for now, the trail has ended and it is time for you to rest. Your eyes are getting heavy. The world is quiet. Everything is still. Good night. Sleep well.